Hello, everyone. I am your host, Tash, and this is Women in Games International Cheat Codes Podcast. Part of being an online presence is that it can make you a target. So, no matter what your intentions are, your visibility can unfortunately mean danger. Years ago, I made a random video about blue pants. I said it's so odd to me that blue pants are such a staple of our time. It's so much that we regard them as a neutral or as an outfit staple. And there's no real use for blue denim pants, but we cling to them. In 2024, we do. So to me, this was like a random observation. To others, it was me gaslighting people because I did not say the word jeans. And it was also me somehow being racist to white and indigenous North Americans, which was a response I did not see coming. Some people even went on multi video rants to explain the history of indigo to me. And just when I thought those reactions were wild enough, people started to call me names, and someone started a Discord channel to try to get me banned off of social media. They failed. I wish I could say there was more nuance to this or that I somehow said some really awful things, but I did not. Being black, female, and visible was enough to make people target me. As a public face for WIGI and a content creator, it makes me ask the question, is my personal information safe? For many of us, there is a lot of unnecessary personal information out there on the internet. To be a woman with a voice in the games industry, we are often the collateral damage for some extremely toxic communities. And it's unfair. Until that changes, we have to do what is needed to protect ourselves. Enter Kanary. Kanary helps you protect your digital identity. With me today, I have Rachel, the CEO of Kanary. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Tosh. I just have to say I am currently wearing blue pants.
You wearing blue pants?
So I don't want to start it up again, but
It's going to start.
Gotta organize a parade to reclaim blue pants.
We should reclaim blue pants because it's out of control. Homer is always in blue pants. We're a blue pants society, and we have to accept that. So, Rachel, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Absolutely. I'm the founder of Kanary. I am a self-taught coder and a creative at heart. So I actually wasn't allowed to play video games growing up, but I love now building technology. And I almost was a poetry major in college, actually. And so I just like the fact that your, group is so focused on supporting storytellers and helping them be a part of these communities that are so fun now. I really resonate with that. And I guess like the way that I express that now is playing some video games with my now husband, who is very into video games. He was like obsessed with the Diablo launch, and I didn't see him for a week. And also just trying to build some of that creativity into Kanary as we approach some really tough topics with people and try to help them protect their information and stay alert and reclaim some power online. And I'm really lucky to work with a super talented team too. So we wouldn't be here without, the whole group of us, building the company over the last 5 years.
So can you tell me what was the spark that inspired you to really lean into creating Kanary?
Yeah, I was working for Obama's chief analytics officer at a startup he founded after the campaigns. And I joined that company right before Trump was elected. And I remember standing in a room with all of my new coworkers at the time, just like so sure that Hillary was going to be our next president. And the grief and confusion and frustration that we all had to deal with after that happened really just was a moment for me to try to think harder about the era of the internet and how people are influenced. So it really did start from more of like a social thing, like what is happening with our society and how are these data sets and internet platforms influencing us to make certain decisions that have such a big impact. And
Right.
I was working with some of the smartest data scientists in political targeting and campaigning. And when we started to dig into like what was going on behind the scenes, I was just new to this industry. My eyes were opened to the data harvesting and predictions that were happening, on both sides of the political spectrum. Everyone was
Right.
using these tools. And so it really started from that point, me as an individual thinking about like how are we supposed to be protecting ourselves from a mega corporation like Facebook or the oligopoly structures like our credit bureaus? Like, how are we supposed to be protecting ourselves? Because at the end of the day, they're going to do what's minimally required. um,
Right.
and so I started really talking about it with my coworkers at the time, and then my family. And after a couple iterations of just small software projects trying to think of something we could do in this space, we ended up launching what Kanary is today.
That's awesome. Can you speak a little bit to the dangers that are present for people who are public figures or people who are even politically vocal?
Yeah, we see this every day. And this is something that is especially relevant in the next 6 months. Uh, some of the dangers that we see are obviously individuals who are putting their opinions out there related to controversial political topics being bullied and harassed on social media platforms. And if you have the resources and your campaign has the resources to be hiring someone to manage that for you, you can kind of offload that emotional trauma. But a lot of smaller activists or creators or storytellers don't really have that ability. And so it can be easy to brush it off. And I think like our lawmakers and our law enforcement often just tend to not recognize the emotional damage that a lot of this targeting can have.
Right.
Um, but I just wanted to call that out first because it is important to just recognize that someone's sending you really intense traumatic images. If you see that, that's going to have an effect on you. Um, and then I think beyond your individual safety, conversations we have with a lot of people around being more public facing relate to their loved ones because they might have the resources of working uh, with a group that can hire Kanary for them or give them some support on social media settings or mandate passwords or 2FA.
Right.
But their aging parents might not have that luxury. And I recently had a conversation with someone who was working on one of the campaigns whose parents were being like pizza doxed essentially. And his information is all locked down, but his parents is out, it's out there. They own their home. It's a public record. It's really difficult to get that changed. And that's something they just had to kind of weather through.
That's unfortunate, and
Yeah.
it is true how families can be targeted. People who have nothing to do with that core person in that way, and it's scary for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when we talk with people about this, our logo is a little bright yellow bird, right? We're trying to approach something that can feel really heavy and scary and serious in a way that hopefully doesn't cause people to freeze or freak out or alienate someone who might not, fully feel comfortable in these conversations. So, yeah.
It's understandable.
Yeah. And, we're also pretty pragmatic about it, right? There's things you can do to help. There's things you can do to take some of the risk away. But like, it's just like any sort of safety measure. It's never going to be completely foolproof, and you have to just be aware of your options and aware of the fact that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get support, and in intense moments, having a plan is like the best thing you can do. And a lot of people do go through these like serious situations, and they're able to weather the storm, right? It does blow over. So I think just it's like having a fire drill planned, being ready.
I think that is something I'm seeing now in the game industry, that creating visibility for people who are underrepresented in this industry, creating more visibility for it inherently makes someone a target because people have politicized it to mean some other type of agenda rather than just people trying to be seen. So, what kind of services does Kanary provide to help protect those people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm sorry, I'm just also processing what you just said because it is so frustrating. I just want to emphasize the fact that like having someone who's a minority in an industry on a panel doesn't have to be a political statement. It can just be
Right.
recognizing that individual for the amazing things they're doing. So yeah, I also feel frustrated by that. And the way we think about it at Kanary is, there are levels of things you can do depending on how seriously you want to take this and how much time and energy you want to put into it. And so the first service we offer is a completely free trial of the product, and it does a scan across the web to give you an understanding of your digital footprint. If you've ever Googled yourself, you probably have a sense of what that means.
Yes. I found out I was
Yeah,
on IMDb.
no way.
Yeah.
What's your movie credit?
I had a movie called Reunion and then one Validation, and I forgot the other. Oh, wow, that's me.
Yeah, well, and your footprint isn't all bad, right?
Right.
Like we talk with a lot of high profile people about the fact that Kanary doesn't work like a flamethrower, right? Like we're not decimating all of the positive things that you've worked hard to get credit for online. But what we do offer, which is like, at the most basic level, is this free scan that shows you what's out there, some of the good stuff, and then also some of the bad stuff. So maybe your address is being leaked by a bunch of data brokers who are, these people search sites that people use to look up, lost relatives or figure out if your boyfriend's cheating, these kind of shady sites that aggregate a bunch of public records and then make them searchable. Or maybe it's even not as malicious as that, right? Maybe you put out a social media post that then got indexed by a search engine or is somehow public, and you don't want those photos out to the public. And so we can flag that for you as well and say, this looks like just a slip up, right? Like you didn't mean to post this and you did. And then working on taking that down or cleaning that up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think one of our goals is to make sure the service is accessible to folks kind of no matter where they stand in terms of resources. And so we have these free scanning tools that help you just get a sense of where you're at. And then our team goes through the list of thousands of websites that we've currently worked with to do risk assessments and then data removal. And we say, this is how you might do it if you wanted to do it yourself. Here's who to contact. Here's what to say. And so in the software, that's all built in at a free product level. And then on the paid side, you can work with our team more directly to automate a bunch of those removals and increase the amount of information you cover. So if you want to cover your family members too, and then increase like the aggressiveness of the takedowns. So that's what our current product is doing today, to help folks like you mentioned who might be on those panels or streaming and trying to get visibility.
I think that the longer social media is around, it kind of makes people rigid. It doesn't allow them to grow. For instance, the mistakes I made when I was a teenager are invisible, right? The thoughts I had, no one knows that except whoever my friends were at that time.
Mm-hmm.
However, with social media and having a platform, the things that I thought were problematic thoughts in my youth are not anywhere near where I am, or how I live or what I think now. And I think that a lot of us aren't necessarily aware of what's out there from the fails of our past.
Yeah, it's wild to think about the upcoming generations and how they will find that balance. And we have a lot of younger people on our platform too who are in gaming and very used to being on Discord. It's kind of like when I was coming up on the internet, Reddit was sort of like what Discord is today, where a little bit the Wild West, a lot of bad behavior. The mods are kind of their own governors, right? And I've been really impressed with the younger people who I've spoken with who are on Discord and aware of the fact that like by joining a certain Discord, those mods can see your IP address. So you should be using a VPN, right? Because
Right.
otherwise, if those mods have different goals than you do, or, you know, want to make your life difficult, they can just use that against you. So there are like little things that can really go a long way. And I think, you know, anyone who grew up on social media just has a little bit more of that innate awareness about what they should be doing. So we started off the conversation with some pretty dark topics, but I will say I'm pretty optimistic that like the next generation definitely has the technical capability to be smarter about what they're doing online, or at
Right.
least handle it differently.
And I've seen them really lean into supporting each other to
Mm.
say, hey, that's a problem, and not like just online, but to even say that to their friends in person. What you posted wasn't cool, like I've seen that happen, and that gives me so much hope that it doesn't just exist in this online bubble, that it exists in the world for them as well. They're learning different things with the tools that they have, and I think that's also beautiful.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, I'm a privacy pragmatist, and so visibility is so important to this generation,
Right.
and visibility online. And as an employer, I agree, right? If I get an applicant who is like a really great personal blog with a bunch of cool projects, I'm going to be engaged with that more than someone who literally doesn't even have a LinkedIn, right? It's going to be harder to engage on that level. Um, and I think, like I said, you know, there are ways to go about making yourself visible, but still making sure your home address isn't listed and easy to find, making
Right.
sure that your photos you're uploading aren't geotagged, you know, just small things. It doesn't have to be super arduous that can really help.
That's right. Yes. And we forget that too, especially for parents who are uploading geotagged photos of their kids in certain places.
Yeah.
It is really just another security step that needs to be taken to protect your little people.
Yeah. Um, I, I'm really inspired. Like, have you heard of the term Finstagram?
Yes.
Like,
My
that's
daughter
the,
told me she had a Finsta, and I thought I should look that up, and that's what I found.
yeah. Well, and I think they're like, as much as Instagram really wants to have your entire identity mapped out so they can just sell you everything, there are ways to kind of get around the system. There are ways to get around those platforms and just make sure that you're, maintaining some sense of privacy or control over your information and how you're perceived, either by big advertisers or by your parents, right? Like,
Right.
um,
I'm trying to be very careful about. I have two accounts, so I have one public account where I can be funny and silly, and then I have my private account where my family lives, and it's just people that I know in this little bubble. So
mm,
it's, but I also still make sure that my photos are not geotagged.
yeah. Have you seen the TikTok account Not Con Junior?
No.
Um, I don't know if you all have links and stuff, but I can send you this TikTok account. That is so smart to be dividing your social media presence, because it can feel like the best way to start on social media by like keeping it your private community or like inviting your friends to follow you. That can feel like the best way to get started. Um, but then tying it back to this TikTok account, you could just like go through your followers and figure out everything about you, right? Like you figure out your
Right.
full date of birth, you figure out where you're from, you can figure out who your parents are, you can figure out, like,
What high school you went to when you
yeah,
graduated? Yes.
yeah. So there's a couple of TikTok accounts that will just take someone's username and say like, okay, I'm going to find kind of everything about you, and they go through the process, and it's very entertaining.
I've seen someone on TikTok take a picture and then show where they were on a map
Mhm.
from that picture. And that blew my mind. I didn't know just one detail because this tree is only present in this part of America. And I go, wait a minute, what's
Yeah.
happening?
Well, now there are tools that are doing that with specific image recognition AI. So upload a photo and it'll give you a breakdown of everything in the photo and where it's associated. So,
Speaking of being easily found, how can people sign up for Kanary?
well, we are on just kanary.com, and that's Kanary with a K. Like I'm very aware that we are not the only Kanary out there. There's a couple security companies with the same name, but we're, to my knowledge, the only Kanary with a K security product. And you can go to our website and sign up for our service, either for the free offering or something paid, up to you. And we're actually working on launching a new product this fall and recruiting for early beta testers. And so if you are excited about what we're working on and you want to be a beta tester and get free access to a bunch of cool new features, that would be another place to find us. And that would just be at kanary.com/waitlist.
Okay.
Or,
Thank you.
I can
Yes.
also, I think you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find us on Reddit. If you DM us on any of those social platforms, we're happy to follow up on getting you beta access.
Thank you. So,
Mm-hmm.
what, just to wrap up what we've been talking about earlier, why is this service so important for storytellers?
Well, I would be curious to kind of like put the question back on you because I was listening through a couple of your previous interviews, and like the one that stood out to me was like Emma Rose and just being visible as a gamer and the trolling that, she's endured. I am always inspired by the people who are so resilient. But not all of us are naturally that resilient. In fact, I'm somebody who's like very much overwhelmed by being visible. I think I, as a founder, have to really push myself because I know it's important for the company and for the mission to be talking about these things. But for those of us who aren't just like naturally immune to online hate, having something there to email or to check in on, or just to know that something else is out there helping you or looking out for you, I think that's just that peace of mind is really important. And knowing that there's like a team of smart people who deal with this with a lot of other cases that have your back. And I think, that's where we're really interested in helping people so that they don't disappear, so that people don't get intimidated off these platforms, so that they can
Right.
find a way to still be visible, but mentally healthy and safe. Because people's stories should be told. And even if you're not in the majority, like that's even more important that you're out there sharing.
I think that asking people to be brave to exist is an unreasonable ask. And until there is more action taken on so many levels to offer protection to people who are just literally existing, it is important for us to be more proactive for ourselves as storytellers, as gamers, people who don't fit this odd stereotype, because what we consider the minority is actually the global majority.
Right.
And we are targeted in ways that no matter how thick your skin is, it can still get to you at some point. It gets heavy.
Mm-hmm.
It gets very heavy. So I think that Kanary is very important for me and for people who are just out there just trying to tell their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, if something does happen, right, then you're in action mode. And what do
Right.
you do? Who do you go to? Is a death threat on Discord something you can take to your police? Like those types
Right.
of questions take a lot of time And we should be bringing these issues to our regulators. Regulation is a big thing that we think about and talk about with our members because harassment is defined in certain ways according to state legal codes. And you kind of have to be a lawyer to know whether or not the police are going to take your case seriously. And even if it is a clear violation of the law, if you're in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, what does that look like for, a 19-year-old woman who's getting death threats in a gaming community that she loves, right? Like,
Right.
Ideally, Kanary can be more than just like something that runs in the background and makes you feel like, oh, there's someone there.
Right.
Especially with this new launch in the fall, we're focused on saving people time in those moments of uncertainty so that they can really take action. They can really be powerful in those moments and then start to kind of bring some transparency to the systems that should be protecting us.
Right.
So if you do go to a lawyer to get help and they are telling you incorrect information, like you can share that with the rest of the community who might be interested in that, right? Like this is not a helpful resource. Bringing some of that transparency.
I appreciate that. Is there anything else you think would be you would like to mention about Kanary or about yourself that, or maybe even just a reason why you keep going?
Well, I'm a solo founder, and from day one, I decided that our members and our customers would be my co-founder. And I still have my calendar open every week for members to book time with me and talk through whatever's going on, share feedback, what they hate about us, whatever. And even when things get really hard, right? Like the software isn't working in the way we want it to, hiring's really challenging. Like having those conversations, getting that feedback from people is really what keeps me going because we get feedback that like, this is really, really helpful. To just Google yourself and see nothing scary anymore and not having to have done any work to do that. And to know that there's a consistent process running in the background to make sure some lazy troll can't just Google you and like start harassing your parents. Yeah, that's just one less thing people have to worry about. And so that's really what I think keeps me and the team going.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us. I really thank you for taking the time to explain why this is important for especially people in the gaming industry and women that listen to this podcast. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Can't wait to hear what people think.
So you can find Kanary at kanary.com, and you can sign up for services. You can also be waitlisted for beta testing. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Cheat Codes. I'm your host, Tash. Let's connect on LinkedIn. To stay in the know of Women in Games International, please visit us at getwigi.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also find us on multiple platforms at GetWigi. Thank you so much, Rachel, for being on our show.
Thanks, Ash.